Welcome to episode 14 of the Dan John Workouts podcast. It's kind of a nice story, but my daughter got a job at a university, and one of the things they want to do is have this thing like a healthcare initiative. And she asked me to help out. And what I did is and I think it'll help, is I talked to her about this concept I use called bounce. Now, I got bounce from Peter Wilkins. He's the defense coach for Connacht Rugby. When I work with the American military, we use the word resilience a lot. And of course, if you read the work of Nassim Taleb, you get the word anti-fragile. Even though there might be nuanced differences, basically we're all talking about the same thing. Listen, folks, things are going to happen in life, lots good and some bad. And our job is to kind of prepare ourselves in really every way possible to be able to bounce off of those issues. When it comes to the area of finance, I always tell people, you really need an emergency fund, money that's not credit cards, but actual cash or any kind of reserve that's easy for you to get to fix the minor nightmares of life. Like not long ago, I found out I need 4 new tires on my wife's car. No problem, we had the money. Water heater. Years ago, on December 24th, our water heater went out, and it was right next to our Christmas presents. So we lost a lot that day. But the idea I'm trying to get across in every aspect of your life, be it finance, friends, whatever it takes to talk about, you need to be able to bounce off of things. And one of the things about my world of performance and longevity and fitness is things happen in life. Like literally, you might slip and hit the ground. Well, sometimes you can prevent it and sometimes you can't. But we've got to get ourselves ready to bounce back up. That's why I'm such a big believer in what we talked about earlier, level training. That's where you go from maybe a squatting movement to a prowler to a push-up, and you change levels every time. Boom, boom, boom. Today's workout this morning, we did 3 level workouts. Very simple, hip thrust, straddle deadlift, followed by goblet squat. And it might not look like level changes, but on the hip thrust, you got to get off the ground, you get back up, you change levels, you get the point. And one of the things I try to get across to people, and that's why I emphasize things like something as simple as flossing so much. If you can keep ahead of the dental problems in life, that's going to keep your teeth healthy. Healthy teeth lead to better digestion, which would be better elimination. Your cardiovascular system will be better because you're not going to have those minor infections all the time. And some things like flossing daily or twice daily is going to keep you, it's like wearing a seatbelt every day. Nothing very sexy or exciting is going to happen, but it's going to prevent those really bad things that can happen if you don't do it. But there's another aspect of bounce, and that is accepting the fact that bad things will happen, and you've got to prepare yourself for that climb back up. And that's why I emphasize when people my age, the importance of doing things like standing on one foot, doing speed skater drills where you get used to putting your weight on one side or the other. Just doing a variety of simple things, like I have this little drill where I stand on one foot, and on the foot that's up, I tap certain areas on a box. What we're trying to do there is build balance, sure, but we're also trying to give ourselves just a little extra wiggle room in case something bad happens. Now, we also know this, that if I do hit the ground, I've got to have a system that can handle the problems with hitting the ground. So when as a child, I took judo and I learned how to fall. Learning how to fall is a good thing, but it's also important to have enough hypertrophy, lean body mass, and mobility, free movement of joints around, that if I do fall on the ground and injure something, the rest of my body can rally up and be resilient, be anti-fragile enough to deal with the issue. So that's something I'm going to try to teach the people in this group is bad things are going to happen. And part of our job when good things are going on is to prepare ourselves for those occasional bad things that happen in life. I hope that's helpful, and we'll have more on this in the upcoming episodes.
Let's go through this week's questions from the podcast. And I got to thank Brian for being so good about taking these questions in now so many different places, Instagram, Facebook, and of course the questions that you should be sending into podcast at danjohnworkouts.com. First question is from Logan, and I've answered this question, I feel, a million times, but let's work our way up to 2 million. In Mass Made Simple, you say rest a little between sets in the 2, 3, 5 bench press sequence. What does that mean to you? Is that 15 seconds, 1 minute, or 3 minutes? To me, it means rest a little. That's what it means to me. If I'm benching 225 and I do a set of 2, by the time I sit up, I can go, sit back down and do a set of 3, because 225 just isn't that big of a deal. Now, what that means to you, I don't know. Now, if I have a real struggle on that set of 5, well, I'm going to have to rest longer to get back to that set of 2. Almost universally, Logan, people ask this question week 1, and then about week 6 or sometimes months later, they'll say to me, it made no sense to me at all until I'd done the 14 workouts, and that was perfectly logical. So when you're doing the 2, 3, 5 ladder, 2, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, the 2 is always so easy after the 5. You just don't need a ton of rest. And the 2 is so easy that you're ready to go for the 3 very quickly. Generally, most people find that the rest between 3 and 5 tends to be the longest. But it means whatever you think you need to do. Now, if your Mass Made Simple workouts are lasting 5 hours, first off, I don't know how you do it mentally. I'd be bored to death. But, you should be finishing these workouts, I would say, I hate to give you time. Now you're going to race yourself. But really, it's based to be about an hour. But if you find your workouts going 2 or 3 hours, you're just resting too long. Maybe the load's too heavy and you need to lighten up. That's one of the hardest things of trying to coach. And this is a new thing. It's online. When I was in college, Dick Nottmeyer and I used to exchange letters about my workouts. And I would send my letter from Logan, Utah to Pacifica, California, take 3 or 4 days. He would write his response that day, the next day, send it back 3 or 4 days. I'd open the letter, and that was already 8 days. And so sometimes that letter got back to me and it was already too late. But online, we have the same issue as sending a postal stamped letter, that there's going to be some confusion and some delay. But we also have the problem with that instant access that you have. So I'm still, even though I've been online for 21 years, I've had a website for 21 years, I'm still struggling with something that seems so obvious to me that might be confusing to you. So forgive me, but to me, it's just going to be something you're going to need to practice and figure out on your own. The only workout I was about to say I hate rest periods, but that's not true. The only workout that I truly like with rest periods is called the transformation program, where you do 3 sets of 8 with exact 1 minute rest. But the idea is to accumulate fatigue for that 3rd set, so it keeps you lighter than you think you would be. But in a workout like Mass Made Simple, we're trying to add load, load, load. We're trying to add volume, volume, volume. And we don't want the rest period to get in the way of you coming back and doing all 14 workouts. I have an interesting question from Jesse because there's an issue with the question. Would you recommend only doing half get-ups while doing Pavel's simple and sinister program? It's not my program. I've seen the thing. It's a book that looks like an article to me. I feel you can do. It's swings and get-ups. I mean, I personally, I don't understand why people think that the Turkish get-up is the answer to all questions. I think it has great value. I enjoy what we do with it. We never do loaded get-ups in anyone that works with me, because the cost to benefit ratio of having a heavy load over your face just doesn't work out. I work with multi-million-dollar assets, and I don't want to be the guy that ruins someone's career or livelihood because they made a mistake doing an exercise. There is no Turkish get up in the Olympic Games. To me, it's like the bent press. It's an interesting exercise, the bent press, but I mean, literally no one does it. I know I teach it in the certs, but no one really does the bent press. Yeah, I know a few people do, but there's 7 billion people on the planet Earth, and I think we could probably have a nice dinner with all the people who take the bent press as a primary movement, and I think it'd be a very small dinner. I think you can do anything you want with this simple and sinister program. I mean, I'm a big fan of minimalism, big fan of the work of Pat Flynn. What he does is minimalism. But even Pat would say, there's a 2-week period for this kind of minimalism, but then it's time to slide to something else, but always keeping your big back pocket this ability to expand the workouts back normally. So it's always tough for me to answer other people's workouts. Mark Chang said to me one time, an interesting thing is that the program minimum, which basically is simple and sinister, which is just swings 2 days a week and Turkish get up 2 days a week, still needs to be unpacked. And I thought that was a really good point. And we talked for a while about this, and I want to put words in Mark's mouth, but the sense I got from our conversation was that there's real value in the Tai Chi, if you will, of the Turkish get-up, of the movement meditation of the Turkish get-up. But as a strength exercise, as some people say, and I get it, your shoulder is in, your shoulder's locked down for a while, and I see it, but at the same time, I'm not in the faith tradition of the Turkish get-up. I don't go on Sunday and sing songs about the Turkish get-up and put money in the box. So I think half get-ups would just be perfect for you, Jesse, or not. All right. I hope that's the best I can do. Okay. Thank you. Our good friend Tino asked a question, and it's a good question, and it's a tough one to answer. I'm a competitive boxer in the 81 kilogram class, and I'm struggling to make weight. And I hear you. I've been there as a wrestler and a weightlifter. I've been doing Wendler's 531, and it helped me increase my weight from 77 kilos to 85 kilograms in the past year. But I'm trying to figure out what kind of strength program I should do so I won't keep adding muscle. Would one of your programs work for this goal, or is there a different rep scheme I should start following? That's the $1 million. That's the $1 million question. What do you want from the weight room, Tino? That's the question. I would argue this: from the weight room, you want to get stronger. So, I think Jim Wendler is a genius. I really like his work. I use it with my football players, and it's like the program, the 531, bigger but boring, is like stealing with athletes. I mean, we added our barbell complexes to that, and it was the best mass building program I'd ever used with my athletes. And by the way, to circle back to another question this week, the experiences I've got out of doing that led us to Mass Made Simple with the high rep squats in there too as an addition. If you're going into the weight room, Tino, you want to get stronger. The best thing I can recommend for you with the situation you're in is easy strength. And you might even want to have to go even more minimal than it. But let's just go through this. I would suggest, and those of you who've heard my work before, you know where I'm heading. A vertical press, military press, double kettlebell press, double dumbbell press, pull-ups, a deadlift variation, ab wheel, and just do those 4. Don't do the 5th exercise. And the rep scheme is going to be simple: 3 sets of 3, which is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You're done. With the pull-up, you'll probably have to add load as a boxer. Guys usually pretty good at pull-ups, but don't go crazy on it. In the deadlift, I'd recommend rack deadlifts, 1 inch above the knee, 1 inch below the knee. Don't do them from the floor. And then ab wheel, and just do a set of 10. We're looking at probably a 15-minute workout. You could probably do that 3 days a week easily, maybe up to 5. When the weights feel easy, go up, and that's the only thing to think about. Try to get yourself stronger. A good goal for you would be Well, certainly an 81 kilo overhead press would be nice, and maybe 160 to 200 kilo rack deadlift because the rack's so much easier. And on the pull-ups, I don't know, set of 15 to 20, something like that, with just body weight. And on the ab wheel, you're ab wheeling. When you go into the weight room as a boxer, you're there to get stronger and then get out. Get stronger, get out. Don't think about hypertrophy in the weight room. That's bodybuilding at all. And when you win a big fight, I don't want you doing this to the crowd. I want you thanking the crowd, waving, and being, because act like you've been there before, okay? There's a follow-up question here too. Also, are there any athlete biographies you would recommend reading? Well, you know what? I've never been asked that question about athlete biographies. Of course, the book that changed my life, 7 Days to Sunday by Elliot Asinov, can be looked at like an athlete biography. But when I'm in Ireland, very often I'll buy the Gaelic Association. There's 3 sports: handball, hurling, which is probably the most famous, and Gaelic football. They'll have a lot in there. I've read a couple of them. These are working class guys talking about trying to balance a career, family, and high level performance. There are some really good rugby biographies I've read. The captain of both Driscoll and the other captain both had biographies that I thought were pretty good. But generally, I don't really read athlete biographies too much. And part of the reason, and don't take this wrong, but sometimes I'll know the person and I'll know that there's a lot of things missing. And very often what's missing in their heroic attempts to overcome everything is, in fact, one case in a very famous book is the amount of performance-enhancing pills that this person took. Magically, this person, had all these leaps and bounds, but forgot to mention the little additional work that they were doing at the doctor's office. So I'm not a good source for that. Okay, Tino, loved your questions though. Thank you. We have a question from Yassine, and it's nice to have someone I actually know. I had the privilege of working with you at the HKC in London earlier this year, and have hugely enjoyed learning from you through the new website and podcast. Thank you. And thanks for being on the website too. I would appreciate your thoughts on a matter of progressions in strength training. Well, before we can go into the question, progression is, progression's our first name: progressive resistance exercise. So progression is job one. To be specific, I have come across various sources who suggest, for example, that one should be able to perform a certain number of push-ups before bench pressing, or so many goblet squats at a certain weight before ever getting under a barbell. Regarding squats in particular, I seem to recall you saying that the order you teach is goblet, front, overhead, back. That's exactly it. Goblet squat first. Goblet, check that, I'm sorry. We go goblet squat first, overhead second, front squat third, and then back squat. Do you look for your students to achieve a certain percentage of body weight in each lift before moving on to the next? Not really. It is movement mastery. And the reason is, now we have to be careful. You said students there. So you just sent me down into an age group about 11 to about 19. So with an 11 to 19-year-old age range, we're gonna be able to not worry about load so much, because with puberty, which is wonderful, and a few other things, they're going to rise right up. They're going to be just fine. So for me, I look for mastery of the goblet squat. The thing about the overhead squat is they do have to be able to lock out a 45 or 20 kilo bar overhead to get to even do the exercise beyond a broomstick or something. So there is the ability to hold on and lock out a 20, or in some cases, if you have 15 kilo bars. So yeah, so for me, it's movement mastery. Now, my good friend Paul Lysingo, he does go by load, and I like what he did too. If you go to my website, danjohn.net, and type in sleepless in Seattle, you'll get his numbers in there there. Yeah, I do think there's value with adults to say, okay, you need to have a nice, as for a man, you need to be able to first show me you can do a 24 kilo goblet squat for one. And then, say we're going to progress up when you can do a 24 kilo kettlebell goblet squat for 10. Then you're going to move to doubles for 24s with 24s for 10. And then we'll move into the overhead squat or something. For adults, that makes more sense because you're a little bit more concerned with adults about injury risk, not necessarily getting injured doing the movement, but the past history of injuries. In the last week or so, I started increasing my throwing. And of course, the moment I start throwing again, my spine gets put under a lot of stress. So when I'm doing my rack deadlifts the other day, I got that twinge in my lower back that says, hey, what are you doing? And it reminded me, so an injury risk for me is throwing the discus, here's my spine, and then trying to do a hinge with it the next day. So I have to be a little bit wiser because of my history of injuries, which maybe sounds weird. Yes, people get hurt in the weight room, but very often it's been a snowball that's been coming down the mountain for a while. Let's move on. On a similar note, would you suggest a specific level of proficiency in single kettlebell work before moving to double bells? It depends. The only double bell work I think that really makes sense to me is double overhead presses, double kettlebell front squats. And I mean, if you have to use kettlebells for deadlift, but the barbell's far better. I'm not a big fan I like one-handed heavy kettlebell swings, but I think if you don't have heavy kettlebells, I can understand why you do doubles, but then you have to widen those feet out, get those knees out wider. So, if you have an injury risk with knees or hips or whatever, you go downstream. I don't believe in double kettlebell snatches at all. So yeah, no, I would say, and then double kettlebell cleans is a marvelous exercise for armor building if the client needs any of that. No, I think you can move right up into double kettlebell work very quickly if the person can master the double kettlebell clean. So your coaching on this, Yazin, is that your coaching would be, can the person handle the double kettlebell clean? So the foundation, building that foundation of the clean is more important in a way than if they're front squatting and overhead pressing. One of my favorite workouts, of course, you were at the HKC, but if you go to the RKC, double kettlebell clean, single double kettlebell press, triple double kettlebell front squat, put the weight down while your partner goes, and repeat 2-1-3, 2-1-3, 2-1-3. My current training revolves almost entirely around the 3 HKC movements. For those of you who don't know, that would be the swing, goblet squat, Turkish get-up. But I would like at some point to explore the rest of the deep six and incorporate barbells. Yeah, absolutely. I would go to presses next, and use that assist with the offhand. Presses next, and then from there, try to master the double clean, which is pretty simple, and then double presses, double front squats, and then make sure you use kettlebells appropriately. I call it the killer app. You might remember that from our time together in June. So that would be the best thing you do with kettlebells, I think, is swing, goblet squat, Turkish get-up, and then barbells for your deadlift and your presses. That's a pretty good program right there, okay? All right. I hope that was helpful. When people ask multiple questions sometimes, I want to make sure I cover them all. And then sometimes I feel like I get a little lost. But these were good questions, and thanks for asking them. Okay, our next question comes from Rorik. That's a good name. Rorik, yeah. If I wanted to attain reasonable levels of strength, hypertrophy, and conditioning, that's not a bad trifecta there. I mean, strength, hypertrophy, and conditioning, that's think you just defined what we do in strength and conditioning. Would it make sense to focus on each one for a single workout throughout the week? Okay, there are people now who argue that's exactly what you should do. You should have like for example, let's just walk through this work. Day one will be your strength day. You could do it as simply as a Marty Gallagher. So you would squat, bench, deadlift, and hit certain numbers according to the program you set up. Day two, the medium day, which is hypertrophy work. Since you benched, squatted, and deadlift, that might be a good day to do the you bench, so horizontal row, you bench, so vertical press, vertical pull of some kind. You pretty much work the lower body with the squats and deadlifts, but anything else you feel like you need to do might be if you use machines, machine work on that. And then day three, see you later. That would be your long bike, your long swim, your long walk, your long run, whatever it be. I think for longevity, health, general health, fitness, I think that's a really good way to go. When Mike and I, Mike Brown, who works with me daily, when we put together our programs, our workouts, one of the things we really focus on is making sure you have that day. We have Wednesday's rucking day. That's when you load up a heavy vest and you put 1 or 2 kilo weights, 2 to 4 to 5 pounds in each hand, and you walk a long ways with that. That's our long conditioning day. Yeah, I think there's some great value in that. The follow-up question you're about to ask is of course the big question. I wouldn't expect to make great gains in any attribute, but could I expect slow and steady gains in all? Yeah. Yeah, because there can be no quality that you beat to death. And don't forget now, the three should. Now, if you're doing long runs, that might be a little different. The long runs might have an impact on the deadlifts. But if you do a long ruck, I don't think it will. On the power lifts, I should have said, sorry. Hypertrophy is going to have an impact on long runs because, if the bigger your engine gets, the more pounding you're going to get on the ground. But if you choose wisely on the conditioning day, swim, bike, ruck, walk, hiking, I don't think it's going to have I don't think it's going to knock down that powerlifting day. I think actually, if you think it through, and get yourself out of the 7-day week, if you can do that. So go powerlifting day, hypertrophy day, conditioning day. Take a day off for sure after that. And maybe you have to take another day off and then repeat it. So that's an 8-day week. Might make a good song. 8 days a week. Write this down, someone. You might have to get away from the traditional 7-day week. Now, if it does work out, you have no issues. So you go Monday powerlifting, Tuesday bodybuilding, Wednesday, long, Thursday off, Friday powerlift, Saturday bodybuild, Sunday long. You can see where you're going to run into an issue right away is on Monday. It's going to be how you balance it. I like the idea of getting out of the 7-day week though when you're doing 3 qualities like that. Obviously, you could also go you could show up at Marty's place on Sunday and do the strength workout. Wednesday you could do your bodybuilding workout, or Tuesday you could do bodybuilding workout, and Thursday or Friday do your long run. And I think things will work out just fine. But yes, you'll make good progress. This is sort of how we trained back in the 70s. When I was getting ready for high school football, we would blend circuit training, pure strength work with long runs and lots of sprints. And, I got lean and ripped doing it. It wasn't very big, but, you can certainly work on all 3 qualities at once. Again, you're going to have to make compromises because it won't be maximal strength, the perfect body, or the, Hawaiian triathlon winner. Okay. Thank you. Good question. John, beautiful name. John asked a question. What a nice name. I'm a year older than you in the age race, and I want to be mobile and agile until the day I die. I like your get back up routine. Anything else you would recommend for general population agility and mobility? Yeah, let's just start from the basics. We'll just start and build from there for you, John. Okay. Whenever you're doing a chore, try to stand on one foot. Now, I know you said agility, mobility, but agility starts with balance. Try to, when you're walking around, this is something Clarence Bass does, and I've taken to it. Walk on and off curbs. Just play, as you're walking down the street, play on the curbs a little bit. Step on, step up, step on, step up. Find ways to challenge your balance when you're. I'm not a huge believer in step ups and things like that, but if you have several different things you can step up and down on just to practice. I also like the speed skater exercise where you go left leg, right leg, left leg, right leg. A really interesting way to make it more difficult. I don't have a ball here, but you can just shove something into your neck like this and do the same exercise. And you'll find that when you squeeze on a ball here or a checkbook, this is for those of you in your 20s, a checkbook, a book that holds checks. By forcing you to, this puts you under stress, and that's good when you do it like this. I like loaded walking in place, John. That's when you, like in a suitcase carry, you put a weight in one hand and you march in place. And to make it harder, you go slower. You go slower. Now, from there, we'll just stop there. There's others, like you can type in vertical bird dog and see my article on that. That's another step up. But what I want you to do first is be stable on one foot. I've never been a big believer in training agility. I've always liked agility to be a much more natural thing. That's why I think hiking is such a good thing to do with the uneven terrain and stuff. Playing games of any kind. I play this game I invented with my grandchildren called tag. I touch you and you become it, and then it chases the rest of us around. It's hard to play the game because I laugh so hard when I'm playing it, but the dodging and diving and things like that. So for agility, I'm a big believer in pure play. Have some fun playing catch with the frisbee, playing catch with the ball. You're going to have to lean over, pick the ball up, pick up the frisbee, chase the frisbee. You're going to have to go and do all these different things. To me, that's real life mobility. And maybe your shoe might catch sometime, and well, you have to rebound out of it. On mobility, I've got to tell you, Tim Anderson's Original Strength is what we do. If you don't know any of his work, just type in Original Strength. He's got 1 million videos on YouTube and some other platforms. I can't recommend enough. If you go to my YouTube account, Dan John, I have a whole bunch of them, but he's much better than me, and I just show you the basics. But I learned so much from Tim. And one of the things about mobility is the free movement around a joint, is that the thing I like about Original Strength is that you kind of pulse in and out of movements. You rock in and out of movements. And so you gently lengthen, whatever. I know what lengthen means. I'm sure there's no science behind it. But you slowly roll and lengthen and rock and slide yourself back into a more mobile place. It's done miracles with my hips and knees, and I'm sold. John, congratulations on being older than me. I will continue to try to catch up. We have a question from Preston. I don't think we've had a Preston yet. I started the Easy Strength program about 3 weeks ago, and it's been great so far. On a recent podcast, when talking about Easy Strength, you mentioned doing overhead presses as the pushing movement and routine. I'm currently doing bench presses. By the way, like I said then, I think that's fine as my pushing movement, and honestly never really focused much on overhead press. Would you recommend I start incorporating overhead presses into my training after this 40-day cycle? Yeah, after. Yeah. I've never been against the bench press in the program, and this is just experience. it comes to spotters and it comes to safety. The bench press is the only exercise that can kill. I had a friend, one of my guys I coached, who later in college read about a bodybuilder who bench pressed without his thumbs on. He went to bench press, the bar slid off, hit him in the face, just about killed him. So, you know, when I was growing up, a man in San Francisco died in front of his child because he bench pressed and got the bar stuck on his throat with collars on, couldn't get the weight off, and choked to death in front of his own son. So you need spotters when you bench press, I think. And so that's my only knock on it. And like I can incline bench press because if something bad happens on my old incline was the straight incline. I mean, it wouldn't have been great, but I could have rolled that thing down. I'd have had other issues rolling it down my body, but I wouldn't have died. So that's my only knock on it. So after, you might want to experiment. I also just read one of your articles where you said that deadlifts and overhead press are the two most important movements to focus on if you could only choose two. Yeah, if you could only choose two. Honestly, I mean, I don't know why. This is a new question. If you could only do one lift, what would you do? I hate that question. I hate it with a passion because there is no, well, of course, it's, you don't know, you never know what's going to happen. But, someday the police are going to show up at my house and find out I was doing 3 exercises and I'll be thrown in some gulag or something like that. But yeah, to me, the overhead press and the deadlift work the most muscles and seem, from my experience, to carry over the most. So that's why I'm such a believer in overhead presses. You ask here, could you talk about why overhead presses are so valuable? I think they're valuable because I've never seen anyone get injured doing overhead presses. I mean, I've seen some ugly stuff overhead, but because you have to be completely locked and loaded underneath, in the bench press, the bench is your stability. But when you're doing overhead stuff, your stability is you. It's your legs, it's your butt, it's your ab wall, it's your spinal rectors, it's your whatever we call this today, this area. And that's why I like it so much. Here's another thing too. If you can bench body weight, that's just not that impressive. You can press it over your head. It's impressive. I've always noticed that in my career. Good overhead pressing seems to carry over in the field of play. But again, that's my experience. I'm sure somebody who's a power lifter is just getting on my case right now because I'm a fool. This is from our friend Jim, and he says, thanks to you and Brian for this great website. Yeah, let me also say this. Thank you, Brian. You are amazing. I really appreciate the individual responses to my questions. I am curious about one thing, though. Boy, I hope he's going to ask how handsome I am. I know you are about my age, but obviously in much better shape. My question is, are you able to do the movements in the stretching sequence as well, or nearly as well as the guy who does them in the demos? Well, Brian's like 12 years old or something like that. Yeah, no. Brian and I are built a little different. I'm built to knock walls down, and he's built to do the demonstrations. Actually, though, we are going to refilm some of them, and maybe I will demonstrate. I move okay. Not great. I mean, let's be honest. I've got a lot of metal in me, a lot of surgeries. I am curious, Jim, again, because I have trouble with some of them, and I'm wondering what kind of improvement I might expect. Well, see, Jim, that's the beauty of doing things like original strength and intelligent mobility. The beauty is that, we say in discus throwing, yard by yard, it's hard, but inch by inch, it's a cinch. And I feel the same way about mobility. If you want to go from, you go to a yoga class the first time and you've got the girl, the 22-year-old over there who's, she's 5'11" and weighs, 28 pounds, and she reaches back and puts her forehead on the ground. Don't compare yourself to her on day one. Compare yourself to the guy who looks like me, has been doing it for a year, and be like, okay. So think inch by inch when it comes to things like mobility, flexibility. You said stretching there. Mobility, flexibility, and even strength, okay? Think about ongoing progress. Don't think about tomorrow I'm going to be, here. That is kind of the beauty of track and field, at least in my experience, where, you do an event like I did the discus. First time I threw the discus, it went 2 feet behind the ring. It didn't go out in the field at all. Within a few days, I was throwing 40 feet. And then with Alan Albialda, I was trying to get over that 60-foot barrier. And then our first track meet, he threw 59 and I threw 72. And then a few weeks later, I threw 89.11. A few weeks later, 103. A few years later, I was throwing over 200. You follow? That's how you have to think about it. So think, as I said earlier, the first word in the field I'm in is progressive resistance exercise. Word one, progressive. Jim, think progressive. If you're doing 6-point rocks and you're hearing a lot of crickety, crackety, clickety, clue, and the next day you hear only a few cricks and cracks, and on day 30 you pop up and down off the ground. That's what we're looking for, that progression. All right, these are surprisingly great questions. I really appreciate that, Jim. All right, we're moving ahead. We have a question for Karen. My question is about the walk-up or setup for the deadlift or any big lift. I've recently started competing in tactical strength challenges, and one of the most interesting aspects of competing in the barbell deadlift event is the walk-up to the lift. We're talking about bar setup. I've been working on my own walk-up so that it's consistent every time I step the lift. Okay, I did the same thing. I've also been practicing visualizing my walk-up and my breathing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the walk-up, how it relates to habit creation, and how you've revised your walk-up over the years. Is your walk-up different, same for lifting as for throwing? Oh, there's going to be a difference, yeah. Do you have any recommendations for reading or videos to watch on this topic? I'm not, Karen, I don't know much about the TSC. I was around when it kind of came in, and I think it's a good event. But let me tell you what I do. And I'm an Olympic lifter, so it's a little different. I will stand near the platform or as they're setting the load for me to go. Okay? As they're setting the load for me to go, I then take my thumb and ring finger on my left hand and squeeze it together like this. Now, most people never even see this. And the reason I do this is I used to do, I used to have it was actually an actual tape. It was a tape, a tape recorder. So hopefully you know what that is. And one of the things they did on this tape to prepare yourself was that this was to remind yourself that your inner mind and body are one. I still have this habit. I don't even remember doing it. Just happens. And the second I link up here, that's my here we go. That's my here we go to me. The first thing I do then is I look on the load on the right side of the bar, and then I instantly walk over and look at the load on the left side of the bar to make sure they look about the same weight. I'm not that concerned that the bar is loaded the right weight. I'm more concerned if there's a misload. And that if you've ever snatched with a misload, it's something you never want to do again because it's really dangerous. I then center myself at the back in front of the bar. So here I'm stepping up the platform. One huge exhale. I then approach the bar. If it's the snatch, I stand tall. I get my socks right on the bar. I reach down with my right hand. I hook grip. I reach down with my left hand. I hook grip. I go collar to collar, so it's real simple. And then I squeeze my lats as hard as I can, trying to break pencils inside here. I push my butt down. I start to drive my chin to the head judge. And then I push with my heels as hard as I can and go like hell. That's my walk up. If you were to call me right now and say, Dan, I want you to snatch that weight, clean that weight, it would be the exact same. you need to have some kind of signal that it's go time. Now, as a discus thrower, it's slightly different because my tension level has to be lower. And so when I get in the ring, there's might be a thing or two on the way up to the ring, but really the most important thing I'm trying to do is empty my mind of thoughts. I bring the discus over like this, and here's in weightlifting, it's this. In discus throwing, it's this. I smile, because if I can smile, my tension is at the right place. I breathe out, and I let that discus go. And when that discus hits where it's supposed to be, my only thought in the entire world is pick up that right foot. And to pick up the right foot, I've got to drive all my weight to the left. And the next thing I know, the discus is in the air, because it takes 1.6 seconds. Your question about walk up at first concerned me, but after I started talking about it, I liked it more and more. I like this question, Karen. I am a huge believer in rituals. One of the biggest rituals we have in the system I coach is that I don't just show up at the meet. I have a checklist that I follow. And one of the most important things I do for a weightlifting meet or a track meet is here's the competition day. Here's the day before. Thursday is going to be an easy practice. Writing the check 6 months beforehand for the meet or whatever is part of the ritual. Calling up the rental car place or getting the flights, that's all part of the ritual. Having before I leave, I make sure I have my card for the affiliation. I go through all the steps. I pull out all my equipment. One thing I always recommend, if the meet's on Saturday, I put my uniform on Monday. I check the shoelaces. I check everything. And mentally, every lift I make that week is funny because, I might only be lifting very, very light loads that week, but I try to make each one of my lifts a single that week that's practicing my arousal level for the competition on Saturday. So for me, when you're working with high-end athletes, when you're working with this kind of thing, your number one job is to coach tension and arousal levels being at the appropriate place. If you want more on this, Karen, I have a book called Now What? ? Now What? And you can get it on Target Publications and on that thing that, overworks their employees, which is very popular on the net, but on Target Publications, Now What? And I go through all kinds of things to prepare you for the platform. And I hope that helps, okay? Okay, we got a question from Joe. I'm a big fan of your website, podcasts, and books. Well, thank you, Joe. I'm a 52-year-old guy who picked up health and fitness before 40, and I love endurance sports. I've competed in every distance of triathlon from sprint to full Ironman, good, as well as running events ranging from 5Ks to marathons. I'm wanting to enjoy the next 50 years balancing strength and endurance activities. I follow your outline of health from doctors, dentists, seatbelts, etc. I think I need to back off lengthy races and find balance in the cross training. I'm incorporating easy strength every other day. Before I go even farther, Joe, first off, I think good for you. Good on you. I mean, that's to me, that's smart thinking. You're already figuring out that you can't truly do everything. Something that cost to benefit ratio. You got to swim things around. Does the Turkish getup have a place in easy strength? We have never found that to work. Now, certainly if you want to do naked Turkish getups, that's without any weight, any load. As a warm-up, I think that's fabulous. We do this one thing. We don't do it this time of year because the ground's so cold, but we just basically set a clock and would randomly go from, I don't know, it can be 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of just doing naked Turkish getups on your own, and everyone just does them. So as a warm-up, and I also think the naked Turkish getup is an excellent daily assessment. I'll find sometimes that when I'm doing a naked Turkish getup, that yesterday I was doing it like this, and today I'm doing it like this. Well, I got really sore and stiff overnight. Something's going on. I prefer snatch I prefer snatch, get down, then get back up. Switch arms, 5 reps, 45 kettlebell. Does it matter if you start to get up on the floor as opposed to standing? Oh, gosh, no. In fact, I kind of like the way you do that. I think there's a lot of value. And in many ways, I think people do far better get back downs than they do get back ups. I pick this up at certs, and I see this all the time. Hey, if you like to get back up, do it. If it's fitting with with the balance you're trying to achieve, with easy strength and the big runs and the big Ironmans, hey man, do it. You go ahead. Remember, all I am is someone with experience, someone who's been around. But that doesn't always mean my opinions and answers are right. It just means that this is my set of experiences. But I did a few sprint triathlons when I was overcoming a back injury. But my knowledge of triathlons is limited. So anything you can share with me really helps me, Joe, to be a better coach. So I appreciate that. Keep doing those get downs, okay? We have a question from TS, too afraid to put the real name, I guess. So TS asks, I have a question regarding your lean made simple experiment you spoke about on episode 13. It was an experiment that I'm not sure worked. Did you mean that you got to beat up or down from your approach doing lean made simple? Or did you mean you didn't get the desired results from how you went about the diet? It was a failure. It made so much sense when we discussed it. But if you'll recall, I was doing the Dr. Eads middle-age makeover diet, which is basically 3 protein shakes a day and then 1 nutritious meal, whatever that means, protein and veggies. And then doing lots and lots of complexes and squats. Now, it's an experiment I'd like to reapproach, TS, because I think, here's the thing, and this is kind of a hard thing. Sometimes you look at something that's so simple, so elegant, and you say, this has to be right. But then when you start doing it, then when you start going through the process, about halfway through, it's like, this sounded so good. Why isn't it working? This is one of those moments where it made perfect sense. Basically, the middle-aged makeover is the modern velocity diet from T Nation. They're basically the same thing. And could it be that, the volume was too high and with the squats and the complexes, or did we just screw it up? I was coming off of an injury. Maybe there was too much stress in my life. Maybe we went the wrong way. It's interesting because if you want to gain mass, you wear sweatshirts all the time and you stay as warm as you can. When you're trying to lean out, if Wim Hof is correct and some of the others, you want to get a little cold. But could it be that the combination of not a lot of food, too much cold, too much volume, just all met and crashed together? So to answer your question simply, we didn't get the desired results, but I still can't explain why it didn't happen. And again, every so often I'll think back and I go, why not run this thing through again? I mentioned this to Mike Brown a few weeks ago, and he was very adamant. He said, it didn't work. Don't be stupid. And I'm like, wait. So, as an athlete, what I hear, Barney Stinson, challenge accepted, but I have to think it through a little bit, TS. It's so beautiful on paper and such a miserable failure in practice. And that's something you have to deal with sometimes. I remember back when interval training first came out, I read an article about this college coach that, read about the research being done and wherever the research would be done in interval training. He decided that the 200 meters was the perfect distance and the perfect workout was 20 times 200 meters. And 3 days a week, that's all his athletes did. At the end of 6 weeks, he didn't have a team anymore. Perfect program, terrible results. There's a hint of wisdom somewhere there, and I just can't seem to get my hands on it. TS, I hope I answered the question okay. And again, if you want to do the experiment, and as I said last time, I think I said 2 protein veggie meals a day and 2 protein shakes a day might be however you want to run that, probably be a better answer. The complexes work fine, the squat numbers. And again, if you get mass made simple, lower the squat numbers down. If you weigh 225, do the 185 or 165 numbers. If you weigh 165, stick with the 135 numbers. Don't push the load on the squat, okay? And if you do it, let me know how it goes. Well, that was a lot of questions, but I'm fine with that. I liked how we had a couple of questions. This was almost like a tapestry. There was a thread here that later connected to a thread there, and I like that. I just like the way things are flowing here. Remember, if you have questions, the best place to ask is podcasts at danjohnworkouts.com. We get them through Instagram, we get them through Facebook, but the problem is I don't want them to get lost, okay? So every week I'm here to answer these questions, and until next week, keep on lifting and learning for me.